For the 6th year in a row now, I am going to be recreating my New Year's illustration. I do this every year and share the process to show how my art has grown and improved over the years. I also share the behind-the-scenes process and what I've been up to in the past year in terms of creative projects, both for art and animation and other types of arts. It's my little treat every year to be able to reflect on what I've been up to. And now, let's see what I've been up to for 2024. It's the Lily Factor! Ding! Let me just open with, whoa, what a year. I was so excited to do this New Year redraw this year that I'd even done these brainstorming drawings in my sketchbook way back in September. Had some ideas of what I wanted to do with Nadja, our New Year redraw character, but I decided I didn't want to do those other ideas. I keep trying to do updated turnaround sheets of her, but yeah, I can't bring myself to commit to that. It's for a project looming in my head that I'm not gonna do. Maybe someday, but not now. Truth be told, those sketchbook drawings were really the only brainstorming done prior to this illustration. So when I started this illustration, I literally just plain started with what you're seeing before your eyes here. The rough sketches. The main idea of what I wanted to improve upon in this illustration that I struggled to do with last year's illustration is bring the background idea I had to life without taking away from the character, but also having accurate perspective. Because the last year's illustration, background's fine and everything, but the way the character's placed with the angle in which the background is in, it's like slapping a sticker right on top of an image. It's not accurate at all. I still love that drawing though. And because I've been doing so many digital illustrations, especially this past year, I had a better idea of how I could do exactly what I wanted to do with this illustration, which meant that the picture in my head was pretty clear, so I didn't really feel like I needed to do any kind of brainstorming. So instead, the air quote brainstorming is all going into the illustration in the sense that, as you can see, I have sketched Nadja 3 times at this point, constantly just starting over with the sketch, reworking the background and stuff to start to get something that I like, and oftentimes too to help that starting process without it feeling too overwhelming is I'll do the rough sketch. If I don't like it, then I'll lighten the opacity of prior sketches and just sketch right over it. One of the benefits of this was at this point, I started to realize just the way the sketch lines were angled and stuff. I thought to myself, it'd be kind of interesting if I tilted the viewpoint of the image. So as if you're kind of looking at it through a slant, or as if you're tilting your head. So rotating that horizon line a little bit definitely made the difference. I knew I had the layout I wanted for the illustration, so I finally started to take the sketch a little more seriously, refine it more into a good rough sketch of our main character in the illustration. If you watch my other videos, you can know more about the thought process of why I incorporate certain elements into the illustration every year. But for this point now, I'm going to start to dive into what I've been up to this year, because I have a lot more I want to say about it. Last year, I kind of talked about how I had fallen out of love with art and I was fighting to get back into it. And I kind of talked about the things that I learned and things that God showed me throughout that difficult time. And this year was me taking off because I'd fallen back in love with art. So I really am excited to talk about that. I'm going to open with the big stuff. That has a lot to do with animation, so we're definitely going to talk about animation first. February, the crucial month. So after watching a very upsetting historical movie that just, puts some stuff in your head that's just horrifying to think about of what humans do to each other, I needed to watch something light. So I was sifting through Netflix, and for the first time in a long time, I was like, I'll even watch something new. That ended up being Sonic Prime. Now, as I don't really want to ramble too much about it, but basically I had been on a closet Sonic fan hiatus for the past 5 years. For reasons I'm not going to get into. So watching it was out of desperation in the sense that I was like, oh, I'll just hate watch it. I know the franchise well enough. That closet Sonic fan door swung open and buried me with nostalgia. Because of that, it kind of helped fuel my desire to finish an animation project I'd been working on for the past 2 years, following a tutorial series on modeling and rigging Sonic the Hedgehog to teach me character creation and rigging in Blender. Coincidentally, the tutorial that I was looking for, but also part of that closet trying to open on me. So instead of binging Sonic Prime, I was like, I'll only watch an episode if I work a little bit in Blender, but I was also feeling more of a pull from God too, like, you need to finish this animation project, Lily. So I finished it up, had the full process video behind that, and I did some animations of Sonic during that project time, and then later on I did another animation of him. And that, I realized later on why I had been told to do that. Not only did it give me more experience and comfort in using Blender and navigating its interface. Actually, the process video that I had shared on YouTube, a connection of mine saw the video and then later on considered me for some animation work that they needed. So I actually have been doing freelance animation work for this person since August, which involved some modeling, some animation in 3D, mainly pan around type of animation, so not character animation. But then later on it turned into some storyboards and now 2D animation, which was a little later on in the year, but I was glad that came up because I did want to do some 2D animation this year. So I got to do some fully colored 2D animation. None of that stuff I can show, but I'll show a quick rough 2D animation that I did prior to that. I'd mainly wanted to focus on turnarounds at that time. So that was animation. Now to talk about art. I filled 2 sketchbooks this year. That was great. I had a lot of fun time drawing. At the beginning of the year, I started working on something with my cousin that we called development sessions. Basically, my cousin and I both have our own animated television series that we've been working on developing for a long time. And sometimes we help each other out. We'll collaborate on things, help each other with character designs and stories. But at the beginning of this year, we focused in more on developing one of her shows. And so we had weekly calls for about 10 weeks of developing this series of hers between character designs and thinking about stories and plots and world building and all that fun stuff. I remember the first session was really interesting, opening with the prompt of, if your character would draw something on a ceramic plate, what would they draw? And the fun part about those drawing exercises we would do is I would draw my guess as to her characters and worlds, which was always kind of fun too, to see how close I'd get it. How well is she telling me about the characters if I can figure it out. And then I revamped my YouTube channel banner and profile picture at the beginning of the year, and it's really fun to see how much has changed since then, but also how many more videos I made this year. A lot of the ways in which I've been growing in art with illustrations and stuff have been documented more on the channel. I recall even having a video sharing my process behind digital illustrations that I made in the summer, and looking back on it, there's already so much that's changed. I definitely had to mix up my process a little bit towards the end of the year in December, because then a lot of projects started to come in, one of which involved doing 2 different children's books for somebody, not officially published or anything. They were gifts to grandchildren, but that required a lot of drawing. I did the art and layout for 37 pages in all. I also had been working on some storyboards for an upcoming art video that I'm really excited about because it's gonna kind of mix up how I typically make videos, but between doing all of those things, it definitely helped me improve my digital art process and working faster, but also in the perspective and viewpoints that I gave. So when it came for time for this New Year illustration, truth be told, I was kind of burnt out of digital art, not gonna lie. So I don't feel like I gave my all in this illustration. There's a lot of details that I put effort into that you just don't end up really seeing much in the illustration, like all the work into this Ferris wheel kind of felt like it was in vain. But I think too, I have so much that I know I can do in terms of digital art now that I just didn't have time to put into with this illustration. But I would say not being able to have enough time to go over the top with this illustration, or not be able to give it my all because I was working on other creative projects I was more excited about, to me is a much better story than to say I didn't put my all into this, but I had nothing else going on. But also, the interesting thing too about having more projects come in, especially around December, is while I was working on the art for the children's books I was doing, I started to really want to work on drawing one of the characters in my shows, which was actually a big monumental deal because this character has been the main character of this particular show since as long as the show's been around, but I never drew him. I was scared to draw him. I ended up drawing like a side character more than him, so most people who've ever seen art from the show think she's the main character, not him. But once I started working on those children's books and stuff, oh my goodness, my love for that show rekindled, my love for the main character rekindled, and I started doing a lot more art of him, which is also a very exciting thing that I just had to throw in there because I loving my shows and getting to work on those more. It's been a struggle these past couple of years because struggle with art, but also struggle with working on my big passions, which is animated television series. And speaking of, I had begun working on a new series idea. It's a spec though, so it's not original per se, but that's been interesting too. It's taught me a lot about screenwriting and all that good stuff, and just the whole writing process, pouring into those Save the Cat books, right? And then there's one more type of art I want to talk about that I don't typically talk about in my New Year videos, but I'm going to talk about this time because it's just so gosh darn important. Music. I think music is a crucial element to storytelling, and it is definitely a type of art, and I love music. I'm a music junkie. And I play the violin. My favorite type of genre music to play on the violin is tango music. Well, seeing as I mentioned Sonic earlier, yep, it's coming back up. I love a lot of songs from the Sonic franchise, but one of my favorites is called Midnight Owl by Tomoyo Ohtani, and it is a tango, and I think that is a very bold choice to put a tango into a video game. And I loved that song so much. In June, my teacher had asked me what kind of music I wanted to play, and I brought up that song, but we could not find an arrangement for it anywhere. So for the first time ever, I actually wrote a music arrangement for Midnight Owl. It's a violin duet, taking all of my favorite parts from all of the instruments in that song and putting it into just two violins. And after a frustrating search to find a way to put the music notes onto parchment, I ended up just doing it in Procreate. It was long and tedious, but totally worth it. And you better believe that I played that at my Christmas recital this year. And on the subject of tangos, another highlight this year was I play in a stringed orchestra ensemble. And for the spring session of the ensemble, we got to play none other than Libertango by Astor Piazzolla, which is my favorite of his, and he's one of my favorite composers, so that was so exciting. But I also got to play first chair during that session, so it was very surreal to be able to play first chair for my favorite song by Piazzolla. It was so great. We also got to play with a mandolin orchestra, and oh my gosh, was that neat. That was an additional thing we did for that session, but it sounded so good. And then of course, I will not forget this detail. I got to see the Sonic Symphony in Boston this September, and
It's been a long time coming, and thank you all for coming out tonight. We want to thank another special person for coming here, all the way from Japan, our best friend.
And wouldn't you know it, but Tomoyo Ohtani made it to the show, so that was really exciting because, that was not long after I'd finished working on an arrangement of one of his songs. And I've already started 2 new song arrangements that I'm putting together. One is Manifesto by the City Harmonic, because that band has just been so good for me this past year. Every time I've been down, their music just is been my therapy, flying to my grandmother's funeral, and then after my grandfather's funeral, just singing their songs to myself just was very helpful and comforting. So I've really enjoyed the City Harmonics music, so I definitely want to do an arrangement of one of theirs. Which has already served me well because talking with my violin teacher about my work on Manifesto, I noticed there was one note in the song that hits just below the lowest note on the violin, in the melody, that is. So I'm like, I either have to play it in a higher octave or I have to play with a lower stringed instrument. So she ended up, letting me borrow her cello to figure that out. And I ended up buying a cello and am now learning to play the cello. So I'm very excited about that, the new start. So I've already got some things musically starting to look forward to. So that's one of the new things I've tried this year is playing the cello. The other thing was sculpting traditionally with polymer clay. Only managed to do a bust of one of my characters and I painted some of it, but it's not fully finished, but I can't show that because that's proprietary. That's for one of the upcoming series. It's actually the character that people think is the main character for the series that I've been drawing the main character of a lot lately. That makes sense, right? But yeah, it's been a busy year, a lot of new things to explore. It's been so much fun falling back in love with art and being able to finish illustrations that I had started a long time ago. I am so grateful for all God has taught me and opportunities He's presented me with and showing me the purpose behind what had been going on. And I'd like to thank you for joining me as I've reflected on this year, and thank you if you've been along for some of these other New Year redraw processes. May God bless you in your life and your art, and have a happy New Year. Bye!